Bailey begins with a battle over a single word: control. To the reformers of his era, birth control meant preventing unwanted conception and giving families greater power over reproduction. Bailey rejected that definition. For him, control did not mean prevention. It meant regulation, preparation, and conscious timing. This distinction becomes the book's central conflict. Bailey feared that separating sexuality from reproduction would weaken personal restraint and reduce creation to impulse. His language is severe, moralistic, and often deeply outdated. Yet beneath that harshness is a question that still feels relevant. Do we approach the creation of life consciously, or only react after the consequences have begun? Bailey believed true preparation started long before pregnancy. It included the physical condition of both parents, their emotional compatibility, their intentions, and the atmosphere into which a child would arrive. In his worldview, conception was not simply something that happened to two bodies. It was something initiated by two states of being. This is the book's first important insight. A beginning is shaped not only by a moment, but by everything brought into that moment. Bailey's next step is to connect the human body with the sky. He briefly describes the reproductive process: ovulation, fertilization, gestation, and then overlays it with astrological symbolism. To the modern viewer, this is where biology and speculation begin to blur. Bailey proposes that the female reproductive cycle has a special relationship with the lunar month. Because both move through recurring phases, he treats them as parts of the same rhythm. The moon becomes more than an object in space. It becomes a cosmic clock. This idea was not unique to Bailey. Across many ancient cultures, the moon symbolized fertility, growth, decay, renewal, and the hidden cycles of nature. But Bailey attempts to transform that symbolism into a precise system. He argues that ovulation may correspond to an astrological event called the prenatal epoch, a calculated moment linked to the eventual time of birth. Here, the book crosses an important boundary. The body is no longer presented as an isolated machine. It becomes a living rhythm within a larger rhythm. Modern science does not validate Bailey's celestial connection, but the underlying spiritual observation remains powerful. We do not exist outside nature. Our bodies move through cycles of activity and rest, expansion and release, formation and transformation. Bailey's mistake may have been treating poetic correspondence as proven biological law. Yet his intuition that human life belongs to a larger field of patterns continues to fascinate us. In Chapter 3, Bailey introduces one of the book's most technical and most controversial ideas. He divides the zodiac into masculine, feminine, and neutral degrees. He then assigns particular importance to the moon and the ascendant at the prenatal epoch. According to his system, these positions could indicate the sex of a future child. Today, we know biological sex is determined through genetics and developmental processes, not astrological degrees. But Bailey viewed masculine and feminine qualities as more than biological categories. He saw them as complementary forces, active and receptive, outward and inward, initiating and formative. This idea of polarity appears throughout esoteric traditions. Creation occurs through relationship, expansion and contraction, movement and stillness, seed and soil. The danger arrives when symbolic qualities are treated as fixed judgments about human identity. Bailey's categories belong to another era. Human nature is far more complex than a cosmic binary. Still, hidden beneath his rigid tables is a memorable principle. Nothing is created by one force alone. Every beginning emerges through interaction, between bodies, between intentions, between circumstances, and perhaps between the known and the unknown. Bailey now reaches the practical heart of his argument. Astrologers had long used electoral astrology to select favorable times for journeys, marriages, businesses, and important decisions. Bailey asks a startling question. If people consult the sky before beginning a voyage or signing a contract, why would they ignore it before creating a life? He turns to the fifth house of the birth chart, the traditional astrological house of children and creativity. Bailey argues that this house does not simply predict how many children a person will have. Instead, he believes it describes reproductive potential, the way creative energy may express itself through an individual. From there, he proposes that the parents' charts should be considered together. Physical attraction, he says, is not enough. The relationship must also contain emotional balance, temperamental compatibility, and what he calls spiritual affinity. This is one of Bailey's most enduring insights. A child does not enter only a biological environment. A child enters a relationship. That relationship has its own emotional climate, its tensions, tenderness, fears, habits, and unfinished struggles. Astrology may not measure that climate scientifically, but Bailey's broader message is difficult to dismiss. The quality of a beginning depends partly on the quality of the space prepared for it. Chapter 5 presents what Bailey calls the first great law. He examines recorded births and works backward, calculating lunar positions, ascendants, and estimated conception dates. Bailey claims that 4 moments are linked: the sexual act, the prenatal epoch, quickening, the stage when fetal movement is first felt, and birth. To him, these are not separate events. They are stations along one coordinated journey. His calculations are intricate. Degrees become hours. Lunar distances become days. The moon at one stage appears to correspond with the ascendant at another. Bailey interprets these patterns as evidence of an invisible architecture guiding gestation. But there is a serious limitation. His examples are few, the biological information is uncertain, and the method was never established through controlled scientific testing. Even Bailey admits that reliable data is difficult to obtain. Still, the prenatal epoch becomes the book's most memorable symbol. It represents the idea that transformation begins before it becomes visible. A seed changes beneath the soil before the first green shoot appears. A decision forms in silence before it becomes action. A life may begin its journey long before the world recognizes its arrival. The prenatal epoch, whether understood literally or symbolically, asks us to respect unseen beginnings. His second great law pushes his theory further. If conception, the prenatal epoch, and birth are mathematically connected, he argues, then conception might be deliberately timed to encourage birth beneath favorable celestial conditions. This changes the role of the astrologer. The astrologer is no longer simply observing destiny after the event. The astrologer becomes a participant, attempting to select the doorway through which a future life will enter. It is a dramatic idea, and it immediately creates an ethical problem. If parents could influence a child's future qualities, which qualities would they choose? Who defines a favorable human being? He speaks of producing children with superior physical, mental, and moral qualities. This language overlaps with the eugenic thinking common in his period, a history that demands caution. Human worth cannot be ranked by a horoscope, physical condition, intelligence, sex, or conformity to a social ideal. That is where his search for harmony risks becoming a search for control in its most dangerous form. The deeper transformation, then, is not the ability to engineer another person. It is the willingness to transform ourselves before accepting responsibility for them. Perhaps conscious creation begins not by designing the child, but by preparing the adults. In the final chapter, he turns from celestial timing to the inner use of sexual energy. He presents sexuality as a powerful, creative force that should be directed consciously rather than spent impulsively. Some of his physiological claims, including ideas about retained sexual energy being transformed into substances that strengthen the body, are medically unsupported. His condemnation of sexual pleasure is also rooted in the restrictive morality of his time. But viewed symbolically, Bailey is exploring a broader spiritual principle. Energy can be expressed immediately, or gathered, refined, and directed toward a chosen purpose. Many contemplative traditions describe transformation in similar language. Desire is not necessarily destroyed. It is observed, understood, and integrated. This does not require shame. It requires awareness. His most extreme spiritual claim is that preventing conception blocks souls awaiting incarnation. He describes birth as an opportunity for consciousness to enter physical life and continue its evolution. That claim belongs to metaphysics, not demonstrable science. Yet it reveals the deepest belief behind the entire book. For him, a human being is not merely a body produced by biology. A human being is consciousness entering experience, and birth is the threshold. So, what remains when we separate Bailey's spiritual vision from his outdated biology and social judgments? Not proof that astrology can determine conception, not permission to control the identity or destiny of another person, and certainly not medical advice. What remains is a challenge to unconscious living. Bailey asks us to treat creation with attention, to consider the health of the body, the harmony of the relationship, the clarity of intention, and the environment awaiting a new life. His calculations may not convince the modern mind, but his central question still reaches beyond astrology. What if every beginning deserves preparation? Not only the birth of a child, but the birth of a relationship, a purpose, a work of art, or a new version of ourselves. Every creation has its prenatal epoch, a hidden season in which the visible future is quietly taking form. The future is not shaped only when it arrives. It is shaped by the consciousness present at its beginning. Do you believe the moment of birth is random, or could time itself carry qualities we do not yet understand? Share your perspective in the comments, not as a debate between believers and skeptics, but as an exploration of one enduring mystery. Where does a human journey truly begin? If you value documentaries that examine forgotten books, hidden philosophies, and the boundary between spirit and science, subscribe and join us for the next investigation. Because some books do not give us final answers. They awaken better questions.